Greetings. My name is Sanaya Antoine,
I'm Adriana Clavijo.
I'm Matthew Hinchey.
And I'm Julian Rodriguez.
and we're going to be presenting our case titled Unfolding the Future: The Ethics and Impact of Google DeepMind's AlphaFold.
We will be going over an executive summary, some important background information, the data and technology behind AlphaFold, their problem statement, an analysis, some ethical frameworks that we used, some governance recommendations that we have, and future implications. Google DeepMind's AlphaFold project signifies one of the most remarkable scientific breakthroughs of the 21st century, achieving the ability to accurately predict three-dimensional protein structures using artificial intelligence. However, AlphaFold's success also brings forth complex ethical inquisitions surrounding the responsible use of AI, data transparency, and equitable access to technological advances.
So, beginning with some background around this case, it's important that we all understand why AlphaFold is even regarded as a breakthrough advancement in AI, biology, science, and just the world in general. So, we must first define what is the protein folding problem. But before we can define that, we must define what proteins actually are. So we're going to need a little biology refresh here. So proteins are molecular machines that carry out nearly every process within a living organism. So it performs functions such as building your metabolism, replicating DNA, building your immune system, and also transporting oxygen to the lungs. So from those functions listed, I bet you can guess that proteins are very vital to our existence. And we quite literally wouldn't exist without them. So I'm going to direct you guys to this graphic that we have displayed on our screen that shows the formation of how proteins are created. So proteins are first formed from a sequence of amino acids. So think of amino acids as words and proteins as sentences that derive from those words. So first, a protein is created from an amino acid, then it is formed into a protein, but that's not its final form. The final form is when it formulates and folds into a 3D structure. Now, this 3D structure stage is important because this is what determines a protein's functions, like the ones that were mentioned previously. So the protein folding problem lies within the fact that scientists and biologists have struggled for decades to predict this protein folding because of how timely and costly it has become. And the reason why it's imperative for a 3D protein structure to be predicted is so that scientists and biologists can get ahead of any drug discovery or disease treatment that is needed due to the folding of a protein. Because diseases can derive from the harmful folding of a protein, such as Alzheimer's, Huntington's disease, and Parkinson's disease. So it's very important that they stay ahead.
The protein folding quest began when British scientist John Kendrew crystallized a protein sample and bombarded it with X-rays. This created a diffraction pattern, and they used complex mathematics to reconstruct an electron density map that revealed the position of atoms. This process often took months or even years, especially in its early days. It was also quite costly due to the specialized equipment and the time involved. It could run into the tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. Although this was a time-consuming and expensive process, it provided highly accurate structural details of proteins, which was revolutionary for science. This earned John Kendrew and Max Perutz the Nobel Prize in 1962.
Yes, so some time had passed, and in 1971, scientists created the first open access repository for protein structures, which was called the Protein Data Bank. And this protein database comprised of 200,000 experimentally tested protein structures. And this was basically created as a way for scientists to openly collaborate and also observe new advancements that were happening within the realm of predicting protein structures. So 2 decades had passed, and in 1994, scientists decided to create the Critical Assessment of Structure Prediction competition, which was there to basically just allow scientists to test algorithms that predicted protein structures from amino acid sequences. And from the protein structures that algorithms would predict, it would be tested against experimentally tested protein structures that were already in existence. And from there, the accuracy would be measured between the two, and that is how the winner would be determined for the competition.
So after the competition, progress remained incremental until Google DeepMind entered into the field. It applied artificial intelligence and machine learning to create widespread benefit. Things really started to pick up in the years 2016 to 2019. This is when DeepMind created what is known as Alpha Series, which is a series of AI programs. In 2016, the first one was AlphaGo, which was when AI beat the world champion of a complex and strategy-based board game known as Go. Then in 2017 came AlphaZero, which taught itself how to play board games like shogi, go, and chess against itself. And then in 2019 came AlphaStar, which was the first AI to master the video game StarCraft 2, which is a very fast-paced video game that requires the players to use real-time decision making. All this series really shows how artificial intelligence use can think and act as can think on its own and adapt on its own.
2020 came with their biggest innovative tool yet, the release of AlphaFold. It instantly made an impact in the science community, achieving near experimental precision at the GASP14 competition by obtaining a GDT score of more than 90 out of 100 on models for 2/3 of the competition's target proteins. In 2021, after its success, DeepMind and the European Molecular Biology Institute, EMBL-EBI, released the AlphaFold protein structure database to the public. The database began with over 350,000 predicted structures and later provided protein structures covering nearly every known protein on Earth.
All right, so what went into AlphaFold? AlphaFold was trained using publicly available protein data, meaning it didn't go out and collect samples itself. Instead, it learned from existing databases like the Protein Data Bank, UniProt, and a metagenomic database called Magnify. Metagenomics simply refers to genetic material that comes from entire communities of microorganisms in the environment, not just a single species. So Magnify gives AlphaFold access to an incredibly broad range of protein sequences found in nature. AlphaFold uses this information to learn the underlying patterns by creating a multiple sequence alignment, essentially comparing that sequence to many others that share evolutionary relationships. Using that information, AlphaFold's attention-based transformer neural network analyzes how different parts of the sequence interact with each other. It focuses on which amino acids are likely to be close together in 3D space, even if they're far apart in the chain. From all of this, AlphaFold can accurately predict the final stable shape of the protein, all from the sequence of amino acids alone.
Okay, so beginning with our problem statement. So while we all just explained every good thing that AlphaFold provided, and it does represent a monumental leap in biological science, its success does bring forth a complex heap of ethical, legal, and operational issues that must be addressed in order to ensure responsible integration of AI into scientific research. Because with every advancement, there is a double-edged sword that is presented, especially with AI. So it's very important that we all just remain responsible in our integration of it. So some key challenges that my group and I identified and that could arise from the integration of AlphaFold is preventing the misuse of AI generated biological data and ensuring that research remains open and reproducible, and also guaranteeing that the benefits of AI driven discoveries are distributed equally across the global scientific community and it not be just solely inclusive to scientists who went to a certain institution or who are a part of certain foundations or who are a part of a certain socioeconomic status that most scientists do not have access to. So it's important that this remains equitable across the global scientific community.
So what went right? AlphaFold accelerated scientific discovery with years of lab work reduced to seconds. Some models were used to understand the spike protein of COVID, which accelerated research and development of its vaccine. It also promoted open science, providing free access to millions of protein structures. Researchers and scientists used these predictions to advance vaccine design, drug discovery, enzyme engineering, and environmental biotechnology. For an example, they use enzyme development for breaking down some plastic waste. It also strengthened interdisciplinary collaboration using AI and biology, and it demonstrated AI's potential in solving grand scientific challenges. For example, the AI has been used to identify potential drug targets for diseases that previously lacked structural data.
So, even though AlphaFold was a major breakthrough, scientists and researchers have come out with their opinions on some issues of what could go wrong and what went wrong with the data. So, the first issue was the risk of potential misuse. Since AlphaFold released the detailed structures of the proteins, many scientists were worried that others would come in and use these details for harmful things like biological weaponization or for unethical genetic experiments. Another issue that scientists had was the over reliance on a single corporate controlled AI tool. Since DeepMind is the only corporation that has access and control of AlphaFold, there was many concerns that this could lead to issues since it was just one private corporation. Another issue was the lack of transparency in model training and data provenance. So DeepMind didn't release all the steps all the steps they used to train the model. So it's hard for scientists to come in and replicate the data and verify the results. Another issue was the intellectual property and credit allocation disputes. And lastly, scientists were concerned over the lack of sufficient ethical oversight before releasing the data to the public. They believe that there should be a higher level of independent review regarding the risks before this data was released to the public.
Okay, so the ethical framework that we decided to view this case through is through utilitarianism. So, utilitarianism is defined as actions or decisions that are made to basically maximize the well being of the greatest number of people. So, for instance, killing one person to save five people, or demolishing one home to build three more. Now, those are extreme examples, but those are just kind of a gist of what utilitarianism really just conveys. And the way that we applied it to our case is looking at it through the benefits and harm and then weighing out the net outcome of just AlphaFold in general. So, the benefits that AlphaFold poses is that it accelerates life saving drug development and disease research. But on the other end of the sword is that there is possible misuse in synthetic biology, and it can have inequitable access to other scientists who aren't of a other like economic status.
But we determined that in terms of net outcome, it is clear that the benefits do outweigh the potential harms, especially if proper ethical oversight is being used. And in conclusion, from a utilitarian point of view, AlphaFold is seen as ethically justified because it does benefit the greater good. But it is important to remember that strong oversight and strong governance is important and necessary in order to make sure that the technology is being used responsibly.
So, some governance recommendations for policy development: that all AI research projects with dual use potential should undergo ethical review by independent multidisciplinary committees before public release. For oversight mechanisms, we decided to establish national and international bodies for continuous AI ethics evaluation, particularly for research that affects public health and safety.
Transparency is key. Developers of AlphaFold and other AI research tools should clearly disclose the model's limitations, its data sources, and any assumptions made during training. This kind of openness helps ensure scientific reproducibility and ensures public trust.
So, from a data governance standpoint, we decided that standardized practices should be adopted in order to ensure the responsible use of the management and sharing of this AI generated biological data. That way, there could be ensured that there's long term accessibility and integrity.
In terms of access equity, the idea is to make sure that everyone has access to these AI tools and not just the big and the wealthy corporations. So by creating educational institutions or implementing technical programs, it makes it more accessible for smaller and under-resourced researchers to have access to these AI tools, just like AlphaFold did in their own work. So this slide focuses on potential design and implementation improvements for the future. So first, the first improvement is by integrating explainable AI features, and this would improve interpretability and make it easier for others to understand how AI got to their results. Also, by including ethic checkpoints before releasing the data to the public, this ensures that the data that's being released is has been has been thoroughly checked upon and reviewed for all the risks and considerations for everything. Another improvement is by enhancing collaborative governance between private tech firms and public research bodies. By doing so, this reduces the concerns that just one corporation is in control of all the systems and all the data. And lastly, by encouraging open source models for reproducibility and accountability, this makes it easier. This builds transparency and makes it easier for scientists to come in, replicate the data, and verify results, and also build upon the results for the future.
So what are the future implications? So for organizational implications, AlphaFold's success signals a new era in AI-assisted science. For organizations, it underscores the importance of integrating ethical by design principles into technology development. AI systems that influence human welfare, whether in science, finance, or healthcare, must be transparent, interpretable, and socially responsible. For societal implications, AlphaFold demonstrates that AI can be a force for global good if innovation is balanced with accountability. The case highlights the need for collective governance structures that transcend corporate and national boundaries to address the shared ethical responsibilities of AI research. To conclude, Google's DeepMind's AlphaFold represents both a scientific revolution and an ethical test case for artificial intelligence. It demonstrates that AI can serve humanity's greatest challenges, but only when guided by transparent, accountable, and inclusive governance. As AI continues to transform research, finance, and industry, the AlphaFold story reminds us that technological progress and moral responsibility must advance together. Responsible governance is not a constraint on innovation. It is its most vital foundation. Thank you.
Yeah.